let me bring this all back together, wrap it all up. So, here we go. If I'm saying astronomy follows this, why can't astrology be? Well, let's go back to our 2,000 year ago situation. Let's say it's 2,000 years ago and we've tested all of our lives on this theory of the stars that they always come back to the same spot every August 25th. And we are super confident because it's happened everywhere, every time, for years and years and years. So let's say I was the one that originally figured this out. And I'm about to die, and I make a grand prediction as I die, and I say, okay, I bet if you come back in 2,000 years on August 25th, 2020, those stars are going to be in the same place as all of our August 25th maps. And then I die. Probably because of all the crack. I don't actually do crack. That's just the guy in the story. I am not a crackhead, okay? Now, don't do crack. This is a bad idea. Now, here we go. You might be able to guess where I'm going with this. Let's say you do that, okay? Let's say you do that. You come back 2,000 years later. Say crack again? No, I'm done. Crack is bad. Don't do crack, y'all. Now, what's going to happen? If you came back in 2,000 years and made that map again, guess what's going to happen? What's gonna happen in that situation? It will have changed. It turns out, if you compare a map of the stars on August 25th today's map, with 2,000-year-old star charts, they're in a different place now. It's the same shapes, it's the same constellations, but they've all shifted over about the width of one constellation. So what does that mean about the 2,000-year-old super confident theory about how the stars work? What does it mean? It means it was wrong, right? It means it was wrong, okay? And science adapts to that. Okay? And it turns out here's the thing. If the stars moved over one constellation in 2,000 years, that's a slow change. So 2,000 years ago, before telescopes and before cameras and all of that, they wouldn't have been able to detect this tiny little year. It turns out it actually does change every year. It just changes such a small amount that unless you have thousands of years of maps to see it with, or really precise technology like we have now, you can't detect that kind of thing. So that's the important thing to always remember. Well, I wouldn't say it's no longer a theory. The theory has been tweaked over time. As more observations have come in, we've had to improve our theory of how the stars work, okay? So, as a scientist, we have to update when new information comes in, okay? We have to update as new information becomes available. And that's where there's a problem with astrology. So, astrology bases... I'm sorry we're going so far over time today. I just want to get this done. We had that technical difficulties at the beginning, but let's get through it. We'll get through it. So, here we go. Astrology. Astrology tells your horoscope based on what constellation was behind the sun on the day you were born. So, for example, if you're born in like late July, I think you're a Leo. I don't know all the horoscope signs. And the only way for us to know what constellation behind the sun, because we can't see this constellation that's behind the sun because the sun's too bright, is to have a really good map of all the stars so that if you look at what constellations are out at night, you know what constellation's behind the sun on that day. And we got good at doing that thousands of years ago. We could do that 2,000 years ago, right? And if you're a Leo, astrologers would say, you know, avoid these kind of people, or don't do this today, or whatever prediction they have about your future. But here's the thing. Astrology, current astrology, is using star charts to make their predictions that are over 1,000 years old. Roughly 2,000 years old. Based on what I've just said, why is that a problem? Why is it a problem that all of today's astrology predictions, at least in the Western astrology, are made from 2,000-year-old star charts? I think you guys are going to get it. Yeah. The stars have shifted by an entire constellation in the last 2,000 years. Astrology has not updated to the new information we know about. It doesn't change with the scientific method. The scientific method causes our ideas to change as we get better observations. Our theories get better, right? Somebody's asking about the Mayans. We'll talk about historical astronomy starting next time. We'll get into that kind of stuff. But basically that means that everybody that's following a horoscope right now is following the wrong horoscope, because whatever sign they say you are for the month you were born in, every constellation has moved from the star charts they're using. So everybody is following the wrong horoscope because they're using the wrong star charts. So even if they were somehow able to really tell the future, that's not your future. That's not your horoscope. And yet still people who follow horoscopes feel like their sign, their future predictions based on their sign and what they say like Scorpios are like, for example, describes them perfectly. And that's because if you really read them, all of these horoscopes are super vague. One good example I had was I read my horoscope once and it told me, you may meet someone important today. Guess what? I didn't, but it said may, so that means it was still true, because may means may or may not. So they're very, very vague. But here we go. Here's the very last thing I'm going to say about this. So astrology is not a science because it does not update. That's a problem. But there's another reason that astrology is not a science, and I think this one is worse, okay? This one is worse. Here we go. Here's the one big reason that astrology is worse, or is really not a science. Sorry, here we go. The zodiac signs. Based on everything I've said so far, and we'll talk more about this later, the zodiac signs are the constellations that the sun goes through as the Earth orbits the sun, okay? So how many zodiac signs are there? There's 12. So how many constellations does the sun go through? Just a guess. Well, it goes through 12, right? Goes through 12. So there are 12 zodiac signs because they're saying that the sun goes through 12 constellations, right? It turns out the sun actually goes through 13 constellations, okay? The sun actually goes through 13 constellations. So there should be 13 horoscopes, 13 zodiac signs. Does anybody know when we discovered that the sun went through 13 constellations? I'll go ahead and spoilers tell you, thousands of years ago. We have known that the sun went through 13 constellations and that there should be 13 zodiac signs thousands of years ago. We discovered that a long time ago. So why did astrology say that the stars went through 12? Because the number 13 is an evil, spooky, scary number. Oh no, 13's bad. So, because the people setting up the horoscope system didn't like that the sun went through 13 constellations, they just pretended that it didn't, And they knew that the common people wouldn't be able to tell because people aren't expert at this stuff. So here's the thing. If you are a scientist, can you just can you get an observation and not like it and just pretend that it doesn't exist? No, you can't. You can't. In science, a lot of times the observations turn out to be stuff that showed that your ideas were wrong, and you just have to accept that. Science is about being wrong all the time and using that to figure out what's right, right? Oh yeah, and as someone was saying, the 13th sign is Ophiuchus, if anybody wants to know what that is, and it's a dude with a snake over his head, like he's like, snake, I'm Snake Man, I'm Ophiuchus. So I think that's probably why that one was cut. Like if you're gonna cut one of them, nobody wants to be Snake Man.